Telegram.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast, Week 4. This is Josh.
Greg Willie.
Greg is over there slow clapping. Daniel, as we mentioned before, and Marcus.
Howdy.
All right. Bring back the howdy. You haven't done that yet this year. That was a main staple last year.
Howdy, y'all.
Yeah, cool.
There.
Awesome.
Would it be an unpopular move to dedicate this podcast to Gary Garner, our
No, I was kind of thinking about that, actually.
across the hall Temple Wildcat football fan going way back, passed away this past week, and we'll dedicate this one to Gary.
All right. Well, now I kind of feel like I have to be
serious.
professional about it now.
It's true.
But yeah, we'll definitely miss Gary. Thanks for that one, Greg. Now I have to transition out of that somber moment to the rest of this.
Segue mode.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
How about by reading games that are happening? 12-6A back in action, Week 2. Temple and Belton both picked up victories, setting the tone, hopefully, for those two teams going forward. But on the docket in 12-6A this week, Hewitt Midway at Killeen Ellison, also both winners last week. That game is Thursday or tonight, however we're going to go about that. But and then Friday night, Shoemaker is at Temple, Harker Heights is at Belton, and Coppers Cove at Killeen. In area non-district action, we have Waco Connolly at Gatesville. Man, Gatesville's schedule coming out has been brutal for them.
Pretty tough.
Let's see, Salado at Taylor, Academy at Florence, Cameron Yo at Giddings. Giddings beat Yo last year by 1 point on a field goal as time expired after a super long lightning delay.
Yes.
Marcus was there. And that was, Yo lost twice last year, both by 1 point, and that was the first one. But anyway, we also have Rosebud Lot at Gerald, Austin Hyde Park at Rockdale, Troy at Hillsboro. Another tough game for the Trojans coming off that Robinson game last week, so we'll see how Troy responds. Rogers at Bosqueville. Rogers they're rolling right now, scoring at will against everybody. Granger at Bruceville Eddy, Crawford at Holland, Moody at Meridian, Central Texas Christian at Bartlett, Buckholtz at Round Rock Concordia, and Holy Trinity Catholic at Bryan Allen. So let's start, as usual, with Temple, the Wildcats. Pretty solid victory last week, 37-3 over Harker Heights.
Yeah.
And now they are looking at the Shoemaker Grey Wolves.
Kind of a
Greg.
mysterious team, the Shoemaker Grey Wolves. So far, this is a team that has a 33-point win and a 31-point loss. And had a bye last week, open date.
Right.
So, you kind of have the best and worst of both worlds, and then you have an open date, so only 2 films to look at. But it seems like a much different Shoemaker team, potentially, than what Temple played last year. I mean, last year Temple really rolled 42-6 over them, just ran the ball at will. Shoemaker played a ton of sophomores last year, just kind of throwing young but talented guys into the fire and letting them get the experience. And they ended up winning 2 of their last 4 games last year. They broke that 27-game losing streak and built a little momentum for this year. And they came out and just put it on San Angelo Central in the first game. Ty Bell threw 6 touchdown passes, and apparently he just has a bevy of receivers and backs that he can throw to, give it to. They've all got speed. Shoemaker's defense is a little hit and miss. They gave up a lot of rushing yards against Midlothian. So, Temple should be able to move the ball and run and pass against these guys. But Scott Stewart, he's very leery of the speed of Shoemaker. He said they got a ton of guys who just are like track-type kids that can just really get out and run. So it's a little bit of an uneasy matchup for Temple, but I think it might come down really to Vance Willis, the quarterback, how well he can protect the ball. If he plays another secure game like he did last week against Heights, I think Temple wins the game by double digits. But if he's loose with it, or if Temple turns it over at all, it could be kind of a scary game for Temple, because they're not the Temple of last year.
Right.
They're a good team, but they haven't really hit the stride yet. So
Yeah, and we've said it pretty much from the beginning of the year. In District 12-6A, I don't think any game is going to be scary for any of these teams. At least that's what it looks like. Midway last week against Killeen, that was tight again, especially in the first half. Ellison shut out Waco, but only put up 16 points against the Lions. I think something like that.
It's kind of strange. Ellison hasn't scored much or given up much this year.
Yeah.
Kind of been playing these tight, low-scoring games.
Right. And kind of on a similar note, Harker Heights, which is at Belton this week, Heights has put up a whole bunch of yards, but they've struggled to capitalize on some of those drives that they had, and I think that happened last week against Temple too.
They were pretty good in between the 20s, and then they get down to inside the 30, inside the 20, and just things sort of bog down. And I mean, they got no points out of a lot of pretty good possessions and drives. So part of that's having a sophomore quarterback, and then their top running back was held out last week because of some undisclosed reasons,
right.
At least on the record.
Yeah.
But if they have the Gebhardt guy back at running back, that could be an interesting deal with the Belton game.
Yeah, and just to add on with Shoemaker, it seems like that's a team over the last couple years that not only Scott Stewart at Temple, but Coach Sam Skidmore at Belton have constantly been saying this is a team that is going to keep getting better, and maybe we're starting to see that. I don't know. It's hard to say after a 2-8 season, but
apparently this coach Toby Foreman that they have is very, very well thought of. He comes out of a lot of success at West Orange Stark as an assistant. Beaumont Central, he took them to the playoffs every year he was there, and apparently they're just looking a lot better on the field. And they said they passed the eye test, just in uniform and the speed. But as Scott Stewart said, speed is one thing, athleticism is one thing. Being mature on the football field and knowing how to play and be smart, that goes a long way too. So
yeah.
Speed will take you somewhere, but you have to execute, and he's just hoping they don't start executing until next week.
Right. Well, speaking of executing, Belton did that in a hurry last week against Cove. 21 points in the first 4 minutes of that one, and a eventual 62-40 victory. Tigers' first win of the year. They're now 1-0 in 12-6A. They scored those 21 points on a 31-yard rushing touchdown, a 28-yard pick six, and then they recovered an onside kick after scoring that touchdown, and on the next play it was a 40-plus yard passing touchdown. So Belton went about it in a hurry last week, and they needed all those points against Cove team, which apparently was pretty banged up or is banged up. Still put up 40. So this week I think for Belton, I don't think scoring points is going to be a problem, but to me, this is a kind of a statement game for the defense. They have yet to really stop anybody fully. Last week, was pretty decent because that was pretty much in hand at halftime. But I'm looking to see a few more stops by the Tigers defense. Specifically on third down, and as you mentioned, Heights has that pretty skilled quarterback. Who might be able to do some damage this week. But, for Belton, a convincing double-digit victory would be in order for them, I think, and much needed at this point.
Might be a chance to, be one of those games if you can put it away by the end of the third quarter. You get to throw a lot of younger guys in there, backups, get them some experience, and not take too many lumps with your starters because there's still some really big games coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Temple in 2 weeks. So
right.
The opportunity for Belton to really put a stamp on things early in the season.
Yeah, Belton's beaten Heights the last 2 years rather handily, but just 3 seasons ago, Harker Heights came into Belton and beat the Tigers 34-28, I believe it was, and that was the district opener that year in 2016. But it's usually a pretty good game. I think every team in this district is a rival in some way, shape, or form, but this one seems to kind of have a little bit extra every year. So should be a good one at Tiger Field coming up. Marcus.
What?
As you're scrolling through your phone right now,
Very engaged.
is there anything that you'd like to add to this podcast at this juncture?
Besides howdy.
Well, I think you guys have already touched a little bit on the 12-6A situation. That, first of all, I don't think anybody's going to just roll through this district unless it's Midway, but I can see Midway taking a lump or two as well.
It's probably not going to be Waco, it's looking like.
Probably not, but it is one of those things where one of these teams can just surprise somebody on one of these weeks. Even Waco, I mean, yeah, they haven't won, but that's not going to stop them from winning in the future. And
Sure.
What's a big game, I think, is Cove and Killeen. both at 0-1. It's like, even though it's a long district season, because you've got the 8 district games for each team, I mean, chances of starting out 0-2 and finding your way back into the playoff picture are kind of slim.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whoever loses this game is going to sort of be in a world of hurt.
And just last year, I mean, they were 2 of the 3 teams fighting for that last playoff spot. So the head-to-head matchup is definitely big.
Yeah, the only way that loss to Midway last week doesn't really hurt Killeen is if Midway runs the table and beats everybody, and then it's just kind of
And then
3 spots up for grabs.
moving away from 12-6A, looking at some of these districts, just looking at District 8 4A Division 2, the Salado, Fairfield, Robinson, Waco, Conley, Lorena. That's going to be a fun one to watch going forward. I mean, I think they have a couple weeks before district starts still, but Robinson looked pretty solid last week against Troy. And Tommy Allison out there, I know they're not in our coverage area, but Tommy Allison, his goal this year was to kind of keep some fresh legs in. And that's kind of the reason they pulled away from Troy last week in the second half, because Troy, the smaller school, just doesn't have those fresh bodies on their bench. So you got to play those same guys, and Tommy Allison can sub in. I mean, he was using several different running backs. Even his top receiver was coming out on several plays. So, when you've got those fresh legs working, you can score some points and score them quickly, and that's a good team.
Yeah.
That's a good district right there.
Which starts actually next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Them and 10-3A1 after this week, they all get started as well, and that'll be another fun one to watch. Rockdale, Cameron Yo, Troy in the mix. Lago Vista looks like they're much improved. Gerald's at 2-1 right now. And really, I wouldn't completely rule out Academy, even though they haven't won a game yet. I mean, I still think in that district, Rockdale, Cameron Yo, and Troy are going to be your front runners battling for the top 3 spots. We're one of them. If they go undefeated in district, that's great. It may be tough to do, but then that battle for that final playoff spot is going to be fun to watch between those other schools. I'm not giving much to Maine and UTEC. I still think they're still young, but I don't know. They could surprise some people.
Yeah, I think the only 2 districts that we cover that don't start next week might be the Gatesville district, 5-4A1, and then 13-2A2 with Bartlett and Granger, and maybe some of the TAPs, but
Is that what? 3 today?
maybe the Rogers one as well, but yeah, that might be week 6 for the Rogers, but
Yeah, some of these districts are definitely going to be fun to watch to see how it plays out. I mean, even in 2A Division 1, you got Bruce Valetti playing pretty good football right now. They can make a run at the playoffs. Holland, 13-2A1, they're playing great football, so they could easily run away with that district. But you've got Thorndale that's not going to let that one go, especially pretty chippy game last year between the two. And Thorndale's going to want some revenge there. Granger.
yeah, it looks like Rogers doesn't start up district till week 8. No, is that right? Wow, they got some time with the 5-team district. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's one of those where, 4 teams make the playoff. You don't want to be that 5th team. But,
Right.
but somebody's got to be, so it's just the way it works out.
Could be Florence.
It could be. It could be Lexington, too. But we'll worry about those two. Hopefully nobody from Florence or Lexington is listening to this podcast. But, yeah, sometimes those work out where, you have the 4 obvious teams, but sometimes it works out where you have 4 crappy teams kind of going as well. And then you have a 5-team district with 5 really solid teams, and somebody's got to be out. I mean, that's kind of, the 10-3A district and the 8-4 Division 2 district are both going to have a good team sitting at home. And, I mean, they're not 5-team districts, but just the size of them, by the numbers, will have to have a good team that's just not in the playoffs. They could probably do some damage if they made the playoffs, too, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
That's about all I have to add for now.
Well, in a roundabout way, we mentioned Rogers. Talking about the districts there and the Eagles. I mean, they're just that win over McGregor last week was pretty impressive. McGregor wasn't, had been playing pretty well in the early portion of the year, and the Eagles just kind of put it on them. They're scoring more than 55 points a game so far. So
Yeah, that offense
Eagles looking good.
That offense has really clicked, and as good as that offense has been, that defense has also been pretty exceptional here to start off the season. You got Joshua Minor. We featured him last week for Rogers for our Athlete of the Week. He's already got a couple of interception returns for touchdowns, also does it on special teams. But he kind of leads that defense, which has really kind of taken a step in the right direction. Also a big reason why the Eagles are 3-0 so far this season. So
Imagine how good Holland would be if he was still there.
exactly. He, that's one of the things he kind of revealed is that that his family moved right before his 8th grade year, and all he wanted to be was a Holland Hornet. Well, when you move to Rogers, that kind of changes things. But he's glad to be there. Charlie Roten and the Eagles, they're glad he's there. He's really turned into a solid player for them, and that offense. He also does it on offense for them. So really, just great guy overall, and a big reason why the Eagles are playing as well as they are.
A couple of our area teams have a decent chance, very decent chance really, of picking up their first victories of the season. Moody at Meridian is one of them, and Academy traveling to Florence. Academy's looked pretty good. I don't know if you want to say they've had bad luck. It's kind of hard to say that, but they put up some pretty decent numbers, but just haven't been able to get off the mark yet with that first victory.
It's just mainly their defense. I mean, that season opening loss to Rogers, they were able to put up points. They put up a little bit of a fourth quarter rally. But just, when they needed stops, on third downs, or they needed to limit the big play, they just weren't able to do that.
The other thing is they've played 3 really good teams so far.
Yeah,
so
they haven't.
So
yeah,
that's part of it. But at some point, you are going to have to hold some teams down in the 20s and 30s,
right?
And they
have a chance to win.
And they've got a good shot at that this week against Florence. But if you're Academy, I really feel like this is kind of you have to go into this one as a must-win. It's a non-district game. None of these games have any bearing as far as who's getting in the playoffs and whatnot. But especially when you play in the gauntlet that is 10-3-A-1, you want a little bit of confidence before you start having to go up against those really good teams in your district. I don't think anybody wants to go in winless, even if you are facing extremely tough teams. But if you're Paul Williams over there, you've got to like your chances this week. And really kind of hoping that defense can start to come together because, like y'all have said, scoring points hasn't been their issue. They've got playmakers. They've got 2 solid quarterbacks. I think they're still deciding who their starter is going to be moving forward. But they've got playmakers on that side of the ball. They've just got to find stops on defense.
One thing I was wondering is, they're rotating the quarterbacks, Cephas and Mraz, but Cephas is by far their leading rusher on the team. I was wondering, what if when you throw Mraz in there as the quarterback, you keep Cephas on the field as a running back?
Yeah.
Because, no one else is even close to him in rushing yardage, so it's kind of like maybe he doesn't necessarily have to go to the bench even when you put the other kid in a quarterback. Because the passing numbers are pretty even.
Yeah, they've
both been productive.
Yeah.
It's like maybe you don't take your best rusher off the field.
And that's
right.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's kind of what Paul Williams kind of referred to when I did their preview story at the beginning of the year, is that whether it ends up being Cephas or Mraz at quarterback, whoever doesn't get the spot, they will still be on the field because both of them are good athletes. Yeah. Cephas has proven, he can make plays with his legs. Mraz can do the same too, maybe not at the same level as Cephas, but also, this is his first taste of varsity ball, so there's a little bit more of a learning curve. It's interesting. Paul Williams said that he wanted to make a decision about their starter, at the latest by week 3, preferably by week 2, and here you go, kind of delaying the decision a little bit. So
I reserve the right.
Yeah,
to change
so
my mind.
maybe the 0-3 start has something to play into that. But either guy you go with, they're solid. But again, if Academy can get stops, they'd be in good shape, and I think we'd be talking about them like we did at the beginning of the year, possibly having that 4th spot in 10-3A again. But we'll see. Non-district still, so a lot to be solved, a lot to be played out.
By the way, did anyone see what Clay Cooper from Holland rushed for last week on like hardly any carries.
Yeah, how's this for a rushing average? Clay Cooper for Holland, 8 carries, 327 yards.
Yeah,
So I don't
guess that's what was reported to us. I mean, that's insane.
Let's see, what's the exact on that? 327,
40.
40.875 yards a carry. So.
And now he's got the most yards in the area,
Yeah.
just like that.
And his average is ridiculous.
Yeah.
27 carries, 587 yards, 6 touchdowns.
I mean, is that possible?
I'm telling you, I met the kid in person and talked to him before. He looks like he's been locked in the weight room all summer. He's
Yeah.
a very put together kid.
Clay, if you're listening, just email us and let us know if your numbers are accurate or not.
I mean, when you add the fact of just the physical presence that is Clay, and he didn't have the greatest game against March, so maybe he had a little something to prove. And then you're playing Florence again. No disrespect, but it's maybe he just really wanted
but
to
still,
get
I mean,
the
that's
stats
like-
going.
Somehow I feel like we've already managed to offend Florence in this podcast on numerous occasions.
Every week it seems like.
Sorry, Buffaloes.
And then you look at that line, too. I mean, they're going to create some holes for him, obviously. So
Yeah,
it's possible.
but that was just
I mean, eight carries, 4 touchdowns. So every other
Yeah, that was
handoff, he's getting a
staggering.
touchdown.
Yeah.
So
And that's
His
while playing
average.
some
He rushes for 39 yards. He roads his average.
that's true.
I
Yeah.
messed it up.
It's your church football league stats right there.
any other intriguing matchups in your minds this week?
I do think a little bit Granger and Bruce Valetti might be interesting just to
Yeah.
see. I mean, I'm giving the edge to Granger even though they're going to Bruce Valetti, but to see if Bruce Valetti's kind of got it going under their new coach Kyle Shopik. I mean, they've got the second best running back in the area under Nathan Quattlebaum.
Yeah, that kid's.
Of course, he's got almost 40-something more carries than Clay Cooper does, but he has 583 yards, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And just to see what they can do, and that'll be a good test for them because their schedule. I mean, they played some okay teams. but
Their
this
two
will be their
wins.
best.
Their
Yeah.
2 wins were pretty impressive, and the loss
Right.
was impressive in the wrong sense.
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Yeah.
I had that up a minute ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Granger's probably going to be their toughest test yet, and that should be interesting to see how that one plays out. I would think.
Yeah.
Also, another one just kind of district down is Crawford at Holland. I mean, I think those are both undefeated teams, I believe. Crawford's a traditional kind of power. Holland, I give the edge to Holland at this one at home, but this could be after. I mean, a team that beats Mart should beat Crawford, but this is one of those. Okay, Mart, Florence. Now we're playing Crawford. So
Yeah, I mean, it's just really kind of continuing the varied just level of competition. You start your year with Moody, then you go to Mart, and then you're playing Florence the week after, and then now you're hosting Crawford. So
Yep.
it kind of just plays into the whole thing that Brad Talbert wants the Holland boys over there. It doesn't matter who we're playing, who's on the schedule. We're just going to play to our best ability.
And Crawford's only given up 35 points in 3 games, so that's a big showdown of Holland's offensive firepower against Crawford, pretty stingy defense.
I want to go back to Granger and Bruce Valetti for a second. I was able to talk to Walt Brock over there at Granger, and he said these guys are really kind of going into this game with a kind of a must-win playoff kind of mentality. We kind of talked about his philosophy and his thoughts on, when you play in a smaller district where you just have a handful of district games and your non-district schedule is so long, how do you really kind of keep your guys engaged, through these non-district games that, like we said, they really have no weight as far as if you're making the playoffs. And he said it can be a challenge at times, just trying to keep everyone engaged, keep everyone focused. But when you have big matchups like this, Granger playing at Bruce Valetti, playing up a class, it really kind of adds to the whole, weight of the moment and, what they want to do. I would kind of side with you, Marcus. I would probably give the edge to Granger. They've got a lot of weapons, a lot of success. They're undefeated, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Bruce Valetti got the win. They're much improved. They've got that Quattlebaum kid, like you were talking about, so should be a good matchup. Should be fun.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is Granger's first road game. 'Cause
That
they
they
have 7 home games this year, which is great for them. But it does make it interesting when you have a road game to see how the kids kind of
Yeah.
do that.
Not home on the Grange anymore, are they?
Oh, okay. That's Greg Willie, folks. Greg Willie at his finest.
Yes, we're gonna.
Oh man.
I'll be here for at least a few more minutes.
Yes.
But
Well,
our listeners won't be.
well, if they weren't here before, they aren't here now. Is that?
They're a hardy
Yeah.
bunch.
Yes. Well, the next few minutes might be taken up by Daniel reading stats,
Do we want to do stats?
or we can talk a little bit more about Yo and Giddings.
Let's do that. Who wants to listen to me?
Maybe.
Final County revenge tour against Giddings this year.
Yeah.
You know, last year Giddings beats Yo and Rockdale by
Right.
1 point each. But Rockdale already with a pretty decisive win over Giddings, and now
Yeah.
Yo with the chance.
Right. and now we're all stunned because we hear a car alarm outside, and that might not be a good thing at our Temple offices.
It's fun.
Uh-oh,
Stats.
it's Marcus. Marcus using it as an excuse to
Marcus.
leave early. Awesome. Not cool, bro.
He was never seen again.
But Yo really put it on Gatesville last week. Daniel was out there
Yeah.
at that one. They scored in all sorts of different ways.
Oh yeah, that
Offensively, defensively, special teams.
That
You know,
was
a nice response coming out of an early idle week for the Yeomen.
Yeah, that was kind of a case, unfortunately, for Gatesville of just Yo being, again, just really, really good, having, 20-plus seniors return from last year's deep playoff run, and just coming off of a bye week. Head coach Tommy Brashear over there at Cameron, his biggest worry, he said, is that, coming off of an early bye, you're worried that your guys aren't going to be in game shape and they're not going to be at the same physical level as everyone else. And at least for, last week, that was not the case. They looked good and ready. They looked like they had kind of had some district games already under their slate. But, Gatesville, they're not a bad team by any means. They were able to get chunk plays against a strong Yo defense. They were able to move the ball. They scored 34 points. Those last two in the fourth quarter, probably against Yo's, secondary players. But at the same time, they were able to make plays. So Gatesville has a lot of positive to kind of build off there after that trip to Cameron. But the Yeomen, they look strong. They look good. Braden Brashear, their quarterback, he had 4 touchdowns in the first quarter, 5 overall. Kobe Young, their top receiver, 100 and what was it? I can't find it. Anyway, but he had a big game, 137 yards, excuse me.
Oh, thank God.
So I
glad you found
know
it.
everyone was hanging on a thread. But just a big game for the Yeomen, able to put up some big stats. It'll be a much improved test for them this week against Giddings, so it'll be interesting to see how they respond on the road. But right now, if you're a Yeomen fan, you don't have a whole lot to be worried about. So yeah, I think Cameron Yo's kind of where everyone expects them to be. Really good and tough to beat.
Battle of the Bell might be pretty good this year. It's, Yo and Rockville are both looking like they're having some of their better teams in the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, and then not to forget about the district opener between Troy and Cameron Yo next week.
Ooh,
that's that's
Well,
a nice one right there.
Yep.
Where's that at?
That is at Cameron Yo.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yo.
yep.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about. I don't think any of those top 3 teams, Rockdale, Yo, or Troy, are going to get through that district undefeated. Just too many good teams. The schedule is just too tough, and it would be very surprising if someone gets through there unblemished. But
Yo did it last year, right? So
they did.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Now, for our most popular segment, the stats. The weekly stats. I guess it's the most popular. People love the tweets about them.
I guess.
So,
I don't know. I think
People like to see their kids' names in print.
Yep.
Whether they used to be in the paper, sometimes it's on Twitter now,
Yep.
or both.
my baby.
Yeah.
Well, for all
and come back next week for more impressions.
yes, there's or don't. I would not. All right.
Anyway, take it away.
Roll call. So here's your top rushing leaders through the first 3 weeks of the season. All right. So, to lead off, the man who has been referenced several times, Clay Cooper out of Holland, 587 yards, 6 touchdowns so far. Nathan Quattlebaum out of Bruceville Eddy, 583 yards, 7 touchdowns. Those 7 touchdowns are tied for the area lead. Zach Herbachik out of Troy, 406 yards, 7 touchdowns as well. Work Brown out of Salado, 369 yards, 6 touchdowns. And then rounding out your top 5, Charlie Hudson out of CTCS for the Lions. He also has 369 yards and 4 touchdowns on the year. So, Greg Willie, any commentary?
No. A lot of impressive numbers there, keeping it on the ground.
Yeah.
I like it.
I will say that Zach Herbachik last week, his numbers could be higher, but he did not touch the ball that much in the second half last week. Troy came out and tried to pass the ball in their first series. It didn't work out. He got behind, and then Herbachik maybe only had a couple of carries the rest of the half. As Troy was kind of playing catch up the rest of the night, and then both teams kind of put in a lot of backups. So, continue, please.
Yes.
Shane.
No, that's good insight. Yes. All right. Moving on to your top passers at the quarterback spot. Jace Robinson out of Rockdale. He continues to have a hot start to the season. 929 yards, 10 touchdowns. Vance Willis, your Temple Wildcat, 639 yards, 7 touchdowns. Aaron Rodriguez out of Jarrell. He's got 557 yards, 6 touchdowns. Ruben Jimenez from Belton, 477 yards and 5 scores. And then from Academy, Jerry Cephas, 471 yards, 5 touchdowns as well. So a lot of strong passers through these first couple of weeks. We'll see if they can keep it up.
I have nothing to add there.
Nothing to add, huh? We've got some more impressions over there. I'm not sure if it's what's going on. It's
Just swinging for the fences.
Yeah, we moved on to a side conversation about baseball, but it's somehow related.
I think they were imitating my baseball screen in high schools.
Oh man.
Oh, that was just bad.
All right, we're off the rails here, people. Again.
It's the only way to be.
So your top receivers for the first 3 weeks of the season. Braden Lilly, the move in there for Academy. He's had a good start to the year, 345 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. Got ahead of myself. Jalen McWilliams, also out of Academy, 164 yards, 3 touchdowns. Quentin Johnston, they're out of Temple. He's got 15 catches for 356 yards and 5 touchdowns. Keyshawn Raven out of Rockdale, 14 catches, 372 yards, 4 touchdowns. TJ Harmon out of Bruceville Eddy, 164 yards on 13 catches, a touchdown. And then to kind of wrap it up here, Joseph Crathers out of Jarrell, 12 catches, 294 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So big numbers by some local kids. We'll see what happens.
Yep. Well, that was another successful podcast for everyone to listen to.
I
don't know. Did you take a poll of our listeners?
No,
we use the term successful
but
rather
that's
loosely.
But it's true. So the poll would also
It
suggest
would have
that.
been easier not to do it, and we did it.
Yeah. No, we don't take the easy route to anything.
No.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
This is
Yep. So long.
Bye.